When we go out to eat, we never agree on where to go.
I want burgers.
Pizza.
Tacos it is.
The one thing we do agree on is we all want unlimited high-speed data. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 lines with unlimited LTE data for just $100, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figure it out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Offers require port and of number not currently active on T-Mobile network. During congestion, the fraction of customers using more than 35 gigs per month may notice reduced speeds. Video streams at up to 40p. No tethering. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to Nonprofit U, a forum where nonprofit stakeholders can share lessons learned and discuss the latest developments in the industry. My name is Valerie, Leonard, your host. I'm a consultant to nonprofits, and I specialize in community and organizational development. I work with nonprofit organizations to help them make a stronger impact to their clients and communities. You can find Nonprofit U on Facebook and Twitter. I encourage you to comment early and often using the hashtags NonprofitU, Know More, Serve More, Help More, and CX, as in customer experience. You can also leave comments on blogtalkradio.com/nonprofit_U. The chat room is open, and you can post comments and questions. In order to use the chat room, you must open a listener-only account, and you'll find a link to open the account on the episode page right up under. You can also email me questions at consulting@valerieFleonard.com or send messages through Facebook and Twitter. You'll find a Nonprofit U fan page on Facebook, and the Twitter account is @NonprofitU. We'll be taking questions by phone and from our chat room at about the 30-minute mark. The call-in number again is 347-884-8121. So how does a nonprofit organization's beneficiary or client base differ from a for-profit corporation's customer? Isn't customer experience work just about getting people to spend more money? And why would a nonprofit leader or manager consider someone in need a customer rather than the recipient of some form of assistance? Well, we're going to answer these questions and more in just a little while. And as you know, today's episode is Know More, Serve More, Help More, Can Drive Social Impact. We'll talk about the basics of customer experience practices and explain how nonprofit organizations can benefit from gaining a better understanding of the people they're working to serve. We'll also discuss how customer experience practices used by for-profit businesses such as qualitative research, personal development, and customer journey maps can all support mission attainment and measurable improvements in social impact. So that is true whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit. So again, we encourage you to call in with questions and participate in live chats at about the 30-minute mark. In fact, you can start chatting now if you'd like. The call-in number is 347-884-8121, and in case you forget it, it is posted on the episode page in the upper left corner. Nonprofit communications and marketing professionals are especially encouraged to call in and share your stories and ask questions. Our guest for today is John Corrigan, founder and CEO of Journimap L3C. If you were to ask John to summarize his philosophy of creating value in organizations, tell you something like this. Value creation in nonprofit and social enterprise environments means delivering a better experience for someone who needs help. More people benefiting from services in areas such as healthcare, housing, and education. And dedicated teams of people measurably advancing mission attainment. So without further ado, I want to bring to you John Corrigan. And John, I really thank you so much for being on Nonprofit U today. It's indeed an honor to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to start Journimap?
Well, thank you, Valerie. It's a pleasure to be here today talking with you and having a chance to talk about customer experience and social impact. And so a little bit about my background. I began my career in the technology sector. I worked for about 20 years in the world of software and technology services. And then I spent several years in the nonprofit sector. I was vice president of customer experience at ACT, the education testing company. They're probably best known for their college entrance exam. And so when I was at ACT working in the nonprofit sector, we got into the world of customer experience. And customer experience is really all about creating value, which is kind of another way to summarize how you introduced what customer experience is all about. It's about creating value for whomever it is you're trying to serve. And if you're a for-profit company, you're trying to serve your customers and whomever it is that you're working to sell something to. If you're a nonprofit organization, usually you're mission-driven, and there's somebody that you're trying to serve and somebody that you're trying to help. And the better you can serve them, the better you can help them. And so when I was at ACT working in customer experience, it really struck me that customer experience, which has primarily come from the for-profit world, has huge implications in the nonprofit sector and in smaller mission-driven businesses as well, too. But the work can be pretty expensive to do. To do this, the type of research you need to do is many times fairly expensive. To hire the consultants and the experienced staff you need to really do this work properly is quite expensive. And that, coming from the tech sector and then experiencing customer experience work in the nonprofit sector, really gave me the idea for Journimap. And so that's what brought us to here. Journymap is online, it's in the cloud, it's free to create an account, free to kick off customer or client or beneficiary research, whomever it is that you're working to serve. And then the downloads are very affordable. Actually, the downloads of the actual information you're looking for to better understand whomever it is you're trying to serve, they start at less than $1,000. They start at $895, which is kind of unheard of in the sector. And so Journymap is a solution designed to bring customer experience capabilities to those that may not have a huge budget. And this work does get into hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And so Journymap is designed to provide access to that to nonprofits and other smaller organizations as well.
Okay, great. Now, for our listening audience who may not necessarily be in front of a computer where they can see the spelling, can you spell Journymap?
Sure. It's Journymap with an I, not an E. So Journimap. And the website is spelled just the same. So it's www.journimap.com. Okay,
great. Now I want to go back to your fee structure, and this is not meant to be a commercial, but I'm curious.
No.
When you talk about, what is it, $800 and some change, is that a one-time fee? Is that an annual fee? How often does one pay for that, and what might that entail?
And so you develop a scenario that you'd like to better understand with wherever a problem exists or somebody that you're trying to help out. That they're whatever you're doing, you could be doing something better, but in order to do that, you really need to understand what someone's experiencing, what are the challenges, or what's going well. And so Journymap allows you to map out all that capabilities and get a view from a qualitative research perspective. And then you can download a customer journey, a brief thumbnail of who this customer or client or beneficiary is. That's called a persona, Persona, which is a research-based overview of a representative person. And then also you get another download that gives you some emotion readout. And I hope we talk a little bit more about emotion as we go through our conversation here, as well as some basic empathy findings, so that people who design experiences out there, and this is done in big business now all the time, they want to understand, what is somebody think and feel as they're going through the process of engaging with a business or an organization. What is what's painful? Where do they gain something from that? And so all of those findings in the very top line, good enough representation are all part of the downloads you get for $895. And then also you actually complete one battery of qualitative research, and you don't need to be a CX expert or a researcher to use Journimap by any means. It's designed for just a regular business or manager or administrative person to use. But good CX work is always based upon good research with either the customer or whomever you're trying to help. And so you do complete one battery of qualitative research, and so you need 18 or 20 surveys that are completed in the cloud, and then they come back into Journimap. You don't need to do anything with them. Journimap takes care of the results. And so for the $895, you do get to download the survey results too. And so that's a project. And then Journimap is in the process of building out a platform where like-minded organizations will be able to see similar results or from similar type projects or projects in neighboring spaces. And so your results, there will be a view of those from a very top-line perspective in the platform moving forward. And so for $895, you get those deliverables, and those are in your account. You download 3 documents or PDFs, if you will, that are very visual, and they help you understand what's going on. And then you do get one file of all the survey results as well, too.
Oh, that's awesome. And, yeah, this is, I guess, the last question on the product itself. So will there or is there an option, if you're someone who's, like, totally new to this and you don't necessarily either have the time, the inclination, or the expertise to learn everything on your own, is there an option where there's a consultant who can take you through this process, or do you have other resources that will help guide people, those of us who are not necessarily inclined to do this work through the process?
There will be some resources added in at Journimap that will help you figure out how to it's a fairly simple, straightforward process, but we understand, of course, that there's people who are new to this. And so there will be some videos and some other tools layered in that will be able to help the user. And then also, kind of as a complementary component to Journimap, I'm working on a book called Mission is the Journey. And these concepts will all be brought to life in the book as well, too. And so those will complement each other.
Okay, that is awesome. And, I will, echo, what you said. This is tremendous value. You'll pay thousands and thousands of dollars for a consultant who probably will not take you through this in-depth analysis. And as you were saying before, the more research you do or the more in-depth you get, the more you have to pay. And it's wonderful that you have a very sophisticated tool that will help people get results. And it seems to me like eventually, as you get more case studies and more people to go through the process, you'll be able to do some benchmarking where people can look at similar organizations and see where they stand. So that's very, very exciting, and I thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely. One last point on that cost factor. A small project in this field usually costs around $50,000 or more by the time you get research and consultants and your own team's time and all the other resources you need. And companies that take this seriously easily spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on this work. And so this is really intended to be a solution that almost any organization can use.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And I noticed, too, that you're not necessarily a pure nonprofit. You're not necessarily a pure for-profit. You are kind of a blend of the two, an L3C. Can you tell us about that structure and why you decided to use a hybrid structure as opposed to straight for-profit or nonprofit?
Sure, absolutely. That was, I think, one of the most interesting parts of the journey as I formed Journimap. My background, as I explained, in the technology world, that was all for-profit work. And then I spent several years in the nonprofit education sector. And so my background was really a foot in both worlds. And I began to explore whether Journimap should be a pure for-profit company or a pure nonprofit organization. And there's really a whole new world of social enterprises. And the L3C is one of the business formats that's out there that really, it made a lot of sense to me. The L3C, so an LLC, which people might be familiar with, that's a regular for-profit business, a limited liability corporation. That's what LLC stands for. An L3C adds an extra L there, and it does a couple things. The extra L is for low profit. So an L3C is a low profit limited liability corporation. And what it allows me to do is declare social mission first. And so once social mission has been taken care of, then I can go about just being a regular business with the intention of forming a company that is, of course, self-sustaining and making business decisions to continue to propel itself forward. But social mission does come first. And so I'm able to two of the markets that I think make the most sense for Journimap work are in healthcare or education. So I have the ability to go ahead and invest in things that might make sense for healthcare or education as I go down the path, as opposed to prioritizing what would be of maximum benefit to shareholders or investors or whomever. And so it's, another similar or not similar, another format that's in the social enterprise space that people are somewhat familiar with are B corporations. I think Tom's Shoes is one of the best examples of a B corporation that people might know about. They make one pair of shoes and they donate one pair of shoes. And so their intent is that they're there to do social good as well as to be a going concern as a business. And so that's the exact same intent with the L3C and the Journimap business structure, is to focus on the social impact aspects of the organization and what we can do to help by providing accessible tools and other valuable experiences, but then also move forward as a self-sustaining business as well too. So that's what the L3C allows me to do.
Okay, awesome. And you know what? All too often we think of brand as a logo. I mean, think of Coca-Cola. You think of Coca-Cola with a little swish underneath. However, brands are really so much more than that. They're really the sum total of the customer experience from the first encounter all the way to the last. Can you take a few minutes and share your definition of the customer experience?
Sure, absolutely. And I think brand is an extraordinary topic, and it is indeed very complex, as you point out. I think one of the easiest elements to understand about a brand is the logotype or a color or whatever. Those are so identifiable. But when it comes right down to it, what you remember about a brand, it has everything to do with emotion usually. And so, people have positive and negative references to all sorts of things that they have done in their life, whether it's a restaurant you visited last week or 5 years ago that you recall the dining experience, or whether it was your application for a scholarship, or maybe it was the experience you had at a healthcare clinic. There are any number of examples here with brands in commercial and in less commercial spaces. Nonprofits have brands as well too. And so what you remember from a positive or negative perspective is really helps to define a brand. And companies that are proactive with their brand, they're being proactive with what is that emotion that's produced there as well too. And so, you can't make somebody have an experience, but you can certainly do a lot of work to hopefully facilitate the experience that they would have, good or bad. And so those positive remembered experiences and those negative remembered experiences have everything to do with shaping how a brand is perceived. And so the customer's experience is directly correlated to a brand. You really can't separate them. They go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. So what opportunities do you see for nonprofits to maximize their CX strategies?
So as I did to do Journimap, I began talking to a lot of people. I've done a lot of solution development, technology-based, mm-hmm. but understanding what people's needs are. And so as I talked to people in the nonprofit sector, one of the first things I realized was as I talked about customer experience, and I also experienced this when I was vice president of customer experience for a major nonprofit. I would go there's an organization called Forrester that does a lot of research and analysis in the world of customer experience. And I would go to big meetings in New York, and there would be all these major brands at these Forrester conferences. But then from the nonprofit sector, there was maybe a couple really well-known brands like Red Cross and St. Jude's Hospital, mm-hmm. but it was really a very minor representation compared to all the big consumer brands, whether it's soft drinks or cars or wireless data providers for your mobile phone, whatever that is. This is how they shape their relationship with their customer. They're trying to shape the experiences mm-hmm. people have so that you buy more. And customer experience then gets down to a very measurable activity, and it's all about profit and revenue and cost structure. The better you know somebody, the more efficient you can be with them in customer service and your call center. And so customer experience gets wrapped up in all these issues in a for-profit sector company very quickly. I have to say the single most inspiring aspect of working on customer experience programs in a nonprofit was that actually you get to go a step beyond revenue and profit and cost, and you get to focus on mission. Mm-hmm. Because the mm-hmm. long and short of it is the better experience you provide for somebody, the more value you can create for somebody because you made a real connection there in a positive sense, the more you can help them. And I found that truly inspiring. It does require a little bit of translation. And so in the nonprofit sector, not everybody has customers, or they don't call whomever they're trying to serve a customer rather. Mm-hmm. They use words like beneficiaries and clients or patients and stakeholders, students, whomever that is you're trying to serve. My background from the technology sector, my mindset is that everybody has a customer. Everybody's mm-hmm. working for somebody. But at the end of the day, people who work every day are logging on every day to try to help more people. And so, customer experience is this capability in this area of know-how and tools and methodologies that are really valuable. What's important to understand in the nonprofit sector is that even if you don't focus on having customers, there are people that you're trying to help every day and people you're trying to serve. Mm-hmm. And that's really where all these capabilities can be focused on and can help you be more successful. And then, as I said, in the for-profit sector, companies measure profit and revenue and cost and other metrics like that. Increasingly in the nonprofit sector, back to the concept that everybody's working for somebody, there's many times mm-hmm. a board of directors or funders or other organizations that are trying to help in a leadership capacity, whether that's financially or otherwise. And customer experience work can help nonprofit organizations measure what they're doing. And so if you know somebody's having a really tough time with getting to the information they need to be able to get access to healthcare or whatever that is, mm-hmm. if you figure out how to measure that, and customer experience work can help you measure that, Journimap can help you measure that. If that's the discovery and learning phase where people are having a tough time, it's really stressful, you can then, once you have that piece of information, the more you know, the better you can try and help serve somebody in their ability to maybe get the information. And so you can come back into your team and figure out, well, what could we do to provide easier, better, more efficient access to information as people are trying to gather all of that info that they need to get started. And then, once you've begun to get that information out there in a very different way maybe than what you've done in the past, you can go back out and measure again. You can go back out and see, well, let's go see if people are still this stressed out in the information gathering phase. And now you have the ability to report out on how you've changed what you've done and the results that you might be getting from that. And so it's customer experience work provides accountability measures. And in the for-profit sector, everybody talks about, those numbers-based things that you hear about public companies reporting on all the time. And actually all of that is typically pretty good business hygiene, even if you just figure out what that means to your organization and how well you're being run. But at the end of the day, most nonprofits can really benefit by being able to measure what's going well and what's not going well with whomever it is they're trying to serve, and then being able to report back out what they did to try and get better at that. And I think that's part of the magic of customer experience work as applied to nonprofits. And you speak directly then to how you are or are not helping people more. And that's what this is all about.
Okay, so that's interesting. So this is really an extension of performance measurements or performance management, where we're looking at the nuts and bolts of the organization, but it sounds to me like you've taken it a step further and focused on the people aspects and not just the nuts and bolts.
Absolutely. You just brought up two really important points there. First off, customer experience work at its core is based upon measurement, how you get to measurement. But let's not get lost on the measurement aspect and miss the point that nothing measurable happens without your team making it happen. And so customer experience work can be somewhat complex, but one of the most important things to realize is that even though you have your eyes on the prize of how you're going to help people, nothing really happens without without your team being on board with the ideas of how you're going to help people. And so teamwork, everything from training to very clear lines of communications about subjects like collaboration and how you're going to create an experience, are really core to customer experience work, and they're central to this whole concept. And so when you begin reading about customer experience work, if you go out there and whether it's my book that'll be available here in the next month or two, or other, there's lots of great books written about customer experience work. The employee experience or the team experience is at the core of being successful with customer experience, and that includes if instead of customers you use words like beneficiaries or clients or patients or whomever.
Speaking of those words, beneficiaries versus clients versus customers, what would you say are some of the differences, between, say, a nonprofit's beneficiary or client versus a customer in the for-profit world?
I think my journey through the nonprofit world has shown that this is part of what's so interesting, is that there can be a lot of variances. I think the core concept that's a common thread throughout is whomever it is you're trying to serve. And so in the for-profit sector, the reason why you serve people is so that they buy more, they spend more, they come back to you the next time they need more. And so, there's a lower cost of sales for a loyal repeat customer than if your business is trying to get a customer as a new customer each time you engage with them. And so there's a lot of common business concepts, almost all of them tying back to revenue and profit and cost structure and based upon concepts like loyalty in the for-profit sector. Loyalty and creating value in the nonprofit sector can mean all sorts of different things to different organizations. I think the common thread typically comes back to who you're trying to serve, and once you understand who you're trying to serve, exactly how is it that you're helping them. And, most organizations spend time on their mission, and they articulate that. The more you know about your customer or your client or your beneficiary, whomever that is, and a lot of organizations have a pretty good sense of who they're trying to help. That can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people, but this help measurement is certainly the common thread that I think that comes through. One of the things I'm hoping to do as Journimap grows is to grow some social impact measurement capabilities, and those are not always the easiest aspects to measure. But I think if we have a community of people who are trying to all help, all the organizations are trying to help somebody, there must be some way to report out what is a collective impact there, even if it's in a software format. And I think we'll try and get some metrics and quantification as much as we can. But even in a more qualitative sense, I think it's a really important thing to be aware of. And so hopefully that answers your – I think it depends as much as, just like I think somebody in the software business would say that they're totally different from somebody in the automobile business. And so it kind of depends there as well, too. Their common reporting factor, if they're a publicly held corporation, is going to be, quarterly reports and earnings. But, there are some common themes for nonprofits as well, too. I think it's just actually some of the conversations I've had have been real revelations about. I've talked to some people who really feel as though they don't have customers, but when we start talking about what they're doing for patients or beneficiaries or whomever that is, the light bulb goes on, and we have a great conversation. But it's I find it fascinating that there's a process to go through there for the light bulb to go on, and to really, not that people don't get that they're there to help and serve, but the idea of how you apply customer-based principles to somebody you call patient isn't always a logical conversation in every organization. And so it's a really interesting discussion to have.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And, right now I just want to break and let people know that we are open for phone calls. I want to remind you that we're talking to John Corrigan. He's the founder and CEO of Journimap L3C. This is Nonprofit U. If you have any questions, you can feel free to call in. The number is 347-884-8121. And you can also feel free to post in our chat room. And in order to post comments in our chat room, you must open a listener-only account. And I do see one caller. I'm not sure if this person is calling just to listen or if the person has a comment. I'm going to call on the person whose phone number is 773-624-0585. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, we invite you to share. If you don't have any questions or comments, we thank you for listening, and we'll try right now. Okay, just one moment. My computer is processing. Again, caller at 773-624-0585. If you have any questions or comments, please share with us. And I haven't heard back, but we'll go on, and then I'll come back to the caller and see if he or she has any comments. So I am wondering, there are some people who are very, I guess, jaded, so to speak. They'll say, isn't customer experience work really just about getting people to spend more money, or is it something different or bigger than that?
So, customer experience as a discipline, I think is fair to say, has come from the for-profit sector. And for-profit companies have missions many times, more often than not. I think what's so interesting is to, it's kind of rules for revolutionaries here. After the investment and the time and effort put into developing these capabilities to know and understand the customer better, for the for-profit segment, whether you're in education, healthcare, social services, whatever that is, to take some of those same practices and to say, is there a way that we could do what we're doing better by using these, I think is a really interesting exercise, and I think it can produce some valuable results. What has to be clearly laid out on the table, though, is that these results are not necessarily all about making more money or being more efficient. A lot of nonprofit organizations are self-sustaining from a revenue perspective, or if they're not self-sustaining, they're the grant-making organizations, there's a continuous dialogue about how dollars are being spent. There is a way to use this work to help focus on the efficiency of your organization and how you're using resources best to get through to the people that are most important to you. But actually there's a big step beyond that. And I think the step beyond that is, most going concerns in the nonprofit sector are there because they're doing something extremely valuable for a group of people. How can you do more for the group of people that you're serving today? Or how can you do more for people that you're not quite reaching or getting through to today? Or how can you do both? And that comes right back to these concepts that the for-profit world developed to better know customers, to drive loyalty, and to provide better experiences. I think that there's an opportunity there to use those same principles to better achieve mission and advance the contributions and capabilities of the nonprofit organization as well, too.
Okay, great. So I'm going to try to call her at 773-624-0555 once more. If you have any questions, well, it seems that he or she has hung up. So apparently there's no question at this point. So sorry about that. So if you're a nonprofit leader or manager, why would we consider someone in need a customer as opposed to a client?
I think my experience from the for-profit sector, when I joined a major nonprofit organization, it was simply an extrapolation of the same concepts I had always worked with in my entire career. And that may not be the same for everybody, I understand. But, who are we trying to serve? Who are we trying to make happier? If we make somebody's day better, somebody's overall experience better, if we get them through to a service or a product or whatever it is that goes above and beyond what they were expecting, there's a good chance that they're going to do something, they'll be able to do something better for themselves, and then hopefully they'll come back to us and we'll be able to help them or engage with them more in the future. The more you know, the more you can help. And the way this conversation we had about brand is extremely relevant there as well, too, because not everybody loves doing certain things in healthcare or in education or whatever it is. There's a lot of different fields that have a challenging component of what their core function is. But if you treat people fairly, if you provide them with an honest experience and something that they find valuable to themselves, you end up with positive emotions. And so coming right back to what we were talking about with a brand, the more you invest in the understanding the experiences of the people you're trying to serve, the more you know about the brand experience you're providing, and the better chance you can have to provide a good experience that carries positive emotions that will become positive associations with your brand. And that's all good stuff. That in the for-profit world, that comes back to that's how you create better shareholder value. That enables all sorts of different business activities. In the nonprofit sector, that enables your organization to have better reach, to have better effectiveness with whoever it is that needs help the most, There's all sorts of benefits from understanding whoever it is you're trying to serve and helping them more. And so I think that is at the core of, you have to start with the customer. And I know that word customer can be foreign to a nonprofit, but, we swap out customer for whomever it is. It's most important that, when you come in every day and you're trying to get something to somebody to provide them a better experience, who is that? And that's who you put in place of the word customer, and that's at the core of the concept here.
Okay, great. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at the slide deck that we have playing in the background as we speak. There were 3 slides, and these are examples, and I just want to stress that these are samples of what I've been able to pull from your blog. I mean, you literally have hundreds of slides in your slide deck. But the 2 that kind of jumped out at me were one with the CX process, and then there was another one that talked about the employee experience process. I don't know if you have access to them, but if you could just speak to them, very briefly, and then our listeners, you can download those at your leisure. If you want to learn more about them, you can call in and ask questions, or most importantly, you can go to the blog, and we've included a link in the comment section below the chat room, so you can go and look at those slide decks. So with that said, I'm just wondering if you can briefly describe the CX process, and we're talking about customer experience when we say CX.
Sure. So these are kind of representative samples of the types of deliverables or work guides that you would find a lot of different places. There's been a lot of work done in the field of customer experience in the past decade. And this whole subject of mapping the customer's journey, getting to know the customer better so that you have empathy for them. Empathy is a core concept here. What's it like in the shoes of whomever it is you're trying to help? That's one of the most important concepts that all of this work hopefully gets you to, because at the end of the day, whatever you think your experience is from your view in the office or wherever you are, at the end of the day, what really counts is what does it feel like to be in the shoes of the person you're trying to help. And so so the reason why you go out and map the customer's journey, and there are phases to that work. And I got to tell you, at the core here, anybody who is starting out in customer experience work, it done properly, it always starts with research. And so nothing replaces the insights you get directly from the mouths of whomever it is you're trying to work with. So if that is patients or beneficiaries or clients or whatever you call them, the input you have from very well-meaning colleagues who have been out in the field with them, or experts who can tell you what's going on with that group of people, or somebody who observed a certain group of people just recently, those are all nice things to have. At the end of the day, nothing replaces direct input from the actual people you're trying to serve. And so so that research that gets you to empathy, in customer experience, a lot of that research comes from a field called ethnography, and that's a big word, and nobody needs to really be an ethnography expert here. But ethnography is, the way I explain it as a layperson, it's the type of research you do when you would sit across somebody's kitchen table from them and ask them about what their experience was. How did it feel like? What did they like? What did they not like? What was most challenging? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? At the core, that's the type of research that you're doing here. And so these findings you get from that type of research, which really allows you to understand from the person's perspective what's going on, it allows you to begin to get a different lens or a different view on what it is that you're doing? What's your offering? And so how does somebody come to their understanding of that? And so you begin to get these multiple, you can map those inputs back to different phases of a journey. And so customer journey mapping is a discipline that is coming forward that's really pretty important to understand how your stakeholder or your beneficiary, whomever that is, how they're experiencing the process from their perspective, because that's where you begin to find what's going well and what's not going well. And if you hire expensive consultants, they may very well tell you one of the first things you want to do is find out what you're doing to bug people and then stop doing it. And so that's actually a fairly common sense approach to that costs a lot of money depending upon whom you ask to help you get to that finding. But actually, it's a hard thing sometimes for organizations. I think especially nonprofits where everyone is well intentioned and everyone is doing what they're doing, whether it's because it's new and insight driven, or it's because it's just the way we've always done it, or whether it's because there's some parameter being shaped by another organization, like a school or a healthcare institution or whatever. The more you understand, though, where the hard part is for your customer or whomever you're trying to help, the more you can help. And in the world of for-profit companies, many times, where you can tackle what's difficult, that's where you can overcome objections as to whether or not somebody actually becomes a customer, or if they're a customer, whether they'll ever come back. What's fascinating too, though, is that where you see a customer's journey something that they enjoyed, perhaps you actually brought some delight to them, or that you've provided an experience that they want to do again. In the for-profit world, many times those points in a customer's journey are used to begin to sell you more stuff, just like you had referenced earlier. Isn't this really about selling more stuff? Well, where people are happy, that's where you introduce upgrades or new products or complementary offerings or whatever. In the nonprofit world, where you find you actually have made a connection with somebody and you've gotten through and they're enjoying something you're providing, what could you be doing to enhance the experience that's directly tied to your mission, enhance how much you're helping somebody, get them to a point where they understand perhaps a broader view of what the solution is and what they might be able to benefit by from engaging in it again, how they could introduce this to other people by spreading the word. So there's a lot of powerful opportunities there once you begin to understand this customer's journey. And that's what these slides are about. It's really understanding, if you start from a research-based perspective, which is absolutely critical. I touch on that in my book as well too. And then if you understand how to lay out the kind of the phases that a customer goes through, or anybody goes through, it can be whatever person you're trying to help there. And then, always keeping in mind then what is the strategic intent of your team, of your organization, and how do those things combine? It allows you to kind of level up and take a look at, what is the opportunity to maybe do something better where we could get through to more people. We could provide an even better experience. We could help more. And so I know that's a theme that keeps coming back, but that's really what this is all about.
Okay, great. So it sounds to me, I know in the interest of time, we may not be able to get to all the questions that we have, thought about, but I'm just thinking about the employee experience and then wondering if you have the same type of mapping process for employees and if this could be also applicable to volunteers and board members. Is it all a very similar process with, slightly different nuances?
I think how you map the journey of that group that's external to your organization, once again, whatever you call them, it's a client or a patient or a stakeholder, I think that takes on a little different flavor than many times the work you're doing with your team members. Employee and team member experience has typically a lot to do with training. Training and collaboration, and it's fascinating. One of my advisors has worked in the hospitality industry, and I know from talking with him, there's teams that set out on the path to improve something or do something different, and they not only find themselves in a disjointed situation from their colleagues, but they sometimes find themselves not necessarily always on the same path as leadership too, and so which is fascinating. And once again, it's all well intentioned. You should never assume anything for customer experience work or this experience work that focuses on a stakeholder or a patient or whomever. Getting a reconfirmation from or a confirmation from leadership about what you are trying to accomplish and what your assumptions are is actually really important. And it's important for a couple of reasons. First off, you want to make sure you're on the same page with them. But then second, if you're headed down this path and you're going to work on collaborating with your colleagues across the organization, and that means no matter how big or small, this happens in small organizations just as much as it does in big organizations, that your support from leadership and knowing that the CEO or the executive director or whomever is in that top role is committed to improving the experience for the people you're trying to help and rethinking things, or at least opening a dialogue to rethink things, is really, really important to get everyone on the same page. And so I think when you talk about employee experience, you're many times talking about collaboration and leadership and training so that the team members can be on the same page as you agree upon what is the experience we want to provide and how are we all going to work together to do that. And then you get into some fascinating conversations that, there's legendary organizations in the world of customer experience like Disney, and there are applications of what happens in front of the person you're trying to serve versus what happens behind the scenes, front of house and back of house. And so in order to agree upon all those things, it requires buy-in and collaboration with leadership and with peers and with team members from across the organization. So that's where training and workshops and open dialogue actually is really, really important, and common values that come from the top.
Oh, my goodness. As you talk, I can really see the potential and the power in these tools. I could see how you can use this process to address issues that could potentially cause conflict down the road, or even if there is some conflict now, it seems to me like this might be a really good way, an innocuous way to mitigate those conflicts.
Provides an opportunity. So let's go back to that example from earlier where I made up a scenario where perhaps the most challenging part of somebody's journey that you're trying to help is for them to even get their arms around all the information they have to collect. And so it's that information gathering kind of discovery phase that's the most challenging for them. Well, when you bring that back to the team, what does that mean? In order to address how you help people get to the information and sort through the information and remove that pain point or make the pain point better, it probably means that you might end up rethinking your resources. Everybody has resource constraints, but how are you using resources today versus how might you want to use them in the future, because you probably need to change that. And when you get to changes in how you're going to allocate resources, you're going to very quickly get to a conversation about what team members are doing what and when and how, and maybe some of the systems that you are using. And most systems don't stand alone. Most systems actually connect with the rest of the organization, or they plug into finance, or they plug into ordering of materials, or who knows what. but it's never a standalone conversation. And so understanding what's good or bad for that person you're trying to serve as they go through their process and their journey to get to that hopefully good place where you're helping them more. Understanding the ups and downs of that allows you to come back in and have a really honest dialogue with team members. And that actually can be great sometimes, and other times that can be challenging. It's not always easy work, but it's usually extremely valuable and rewarding to at least kind of get to, well, if this is how things are going today, how are we going to have a conversation about what we might do differently? And it comes right back then to the team members from across the organization and leadership and the values and directions that are provided. It's all of those things put together, because you'll never fix those things just in one spot solution that one team decided to implement without talking to anybody else.
That's absolutely true. Now, we are, I guess, approaching the end of our show. We got about 5 minutes, and there are still quite a few questions that I wanted to ask. I'm wondering, do you have a few minutes that we can go beyond our 1 hour? Because I really think there's some pretty important information that we haven't touched.
Sure, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Keep going.
Thank you. So I'm really interested in your book. Mission is the journey, driving social impact with customer experience. I know it hasn't been published yet, but can you tell us more about it and when we can expect to see it and all that good stuff?
Sure. It's coming out in early 2018 in the first quarter. And what's in the book is really a lot of information on how do you begin to break down all these pieces we've been talking about what's involved in customer experience work and how do you go about doing it. And now, if you're in a big company and you have $1 million budget and a team of experienced hires, that's one way to go about doing this work. But what I want to get across in this book is that you don't need $1 million budget. You don't need an army of consultants. You can do an awful lot of things with resources you have or affordable resources that are pretty accessible to you. And so that's in the book, and that's really what this is about. And I've tried to break out different parts. Different chapters represent different parts of the work to be done, whether it's a focus on research or a lot of companies focus on voice of customer. I talk about how that applies to the nonprofit sector. And so the book focuses on kind of a how-to do that. And then in the back of the book, there will be a brief section that kind of is a mini workshop that kind of helps you put it all together.
Oh, that's great. And I know you touched on it when we first started talking, but we've been on the phone for a while. What made you decide to write this book? I've read a lot of the books that are in the market, and there are some great books. Lots of times they come back to the examples that are used come back to those programs that have multi-million-dollar budgets and that are with the biggest brands out there, which is great to be able to learn from lessons learned from leaders who have taken market leadership positions by knowing their customers better. At the end of the day, though, how do you translate that work if you're in a nonprofit and you're trying to actually make your programs work better? That the reason why I thought that this book was needed is that there is that translation needed from organizations that refer to whoever they're serving as a customer in a for-profit sector to organizations that don't use the word customer, and they're working in a nonprofit or mission-driven sector. And, how do you translate this work? And so the title of the book, Mission is the Journey, is really about what I found to be the most inspiring aspect of all the work that I've done in customer experience, which is, the better you understand whomever you're trying to serve, the more you can help them, and then that's usually what your mission is all about. And so the social impact sector is
The social impact sector is well populated by nonprofit organizations, but the social impact sector also includes companies like my own, an L3C, or TOMS, which is a B corporation, where there's a clear declaration of doing well and doing good. And so it's a broader term than just the nonprofit world, where there's viable businesses where people are trying to help as well too. And so if your goal, whether you're one of these new social enterprise structures or whether you're a nonprofit, if your goal is to achieve social impact, customer experience tools and methodologies and capabilities are really powerful, and they can very much help organizations achieve their mission. And so that's kind of that's the reason why I wrote the book in a nutshell.
Okay, great. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned? I'm sure you've shared some of them in the book, but, very briefly, what are some of the lessons you've learned over the years doing this work?
Nothing replaces the real words, the real comments you get from real people that you're trying to help. Nothing replaces that. The verbatim comments that you'll get from sitting across the table from somebody or on the phone with them or whatever, it's unusual to have a project where you don't come away with a couple real gems that you can quote. Whether you sit across the table from your boss then in a meeting, or you put it on a slide for your leadership board to consume, it's always revealing and quite a conversation starter by being able to pull a direct quote that's very authentic and real from a real person. And so I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I've ever had. And that's why, and in the book I talk about this, you have to commit to the research component. We're not talking about secondary information gathering. You can do that to augment what you've done, but at the core, it's about real people, real comments. And then what you can do with that is really kind of amazing if you lay this out in a different way. A lot of people are familiar with, I think, more traditional market research concepts, which you can apply to nonprofits also. But when you commit to the type of research you do for customer experience work that relates back to ethnography, which is that, sitting across the table from somebody and understanding from their perspective what's it like in their shoes, you then begin to understand, well, why is the decision-making process so scary for somebody? And actually, you'll find that out. It's terrifying sometimes for people to make decisions. Maybe they're in a first-generation situation and they're making a higher ed decision, and they just don't know what to do. Or applying for financial aid has really been something that has been really pretty darn scary for them to go through. And there's similar scenarios for healthcare services or all sorts of different things, and you don't know till you ask. You can make some pretty good guesses, but you always learn something more when you ask. And then how does that tie to the emotion aspect? And this goes back to you don't know till you ask. You can't really understand somebody's emotion by trying to map a journey from third-party comments. The only way you'll ever really understand somebody's emotion in relation to what you're doing is to understand their comments from them. And so, everything comes back to words from the customer themselves or from the patient themselves or the beneficiary. What is their experience? And you get insights from that. And those insights are really about how you better get to achieving your mission. It does all come back to that.
Great. And I also know that you have a very important educational and engaging speaking event coming up this Thursday. It's with Coalition Impact and the Social Enterprise Alliance. Okay, can you let us know what that's all about? Sure.
So the Chicago chapter of Social Enterprise Alliance, SEA, is there's a meeting in Chicago this Thursday. It's at the Coalition Impact Space on Superior. It's a networking event, actually. It kicks off at 6 o'clock. And I believe you've been kind enough to provide a link on your website as well, too. If you're a Social Enterprise Alliance member, the tickets are free. If you're not a member, you're more than welcome to join. The tickets are $10. And logistically, the tickets are only available online in advance. And so it's important to know that you can't get tickets at the door. But it's open to anybody who would like to join. It's a networking event that kicks off at 6 o'clock. And then I will be talking about customer experience and social impact. And I think it'll be a really interesting group of people. The members of SEA Chicago are focused on social enterprises and social impact. And so it should be a really interesting evening. And anybody who's in Chicago this Thursday evening that would like to join is more than welcome to attend.
Okay, awesome. And can you give us the address? And I will be posting the link shortly.
It is on Superior, and maybe while we're talking here, I can tell you the exact address.
Okay.
I have that here. Yep,
and I'll also make sure that I post the link. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but I will post it.
Okay. It is 405 West Superior, which is the Coalition Impact Space in River North.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, and then I will also post a link to SEA for those people who are interested in joining. And I'm really, really looking forward to the event. I think it's going to be wonderful, great networking.
Great networking. Yes, indeed.
Okay, and then the final question, if a person is working for a nonprofit, what's the best way for him or her to start getting into CX work?
So if you're working in a nonprofit and you want to get started, I think I would go back to some similar comments to what I was just saying. I would first translate that word customer to whomever it is you're trying to serve. Who's most important there? Why are you there to begin with? And then whether that is a client or a student or a patient or stakeholder, beneficiary, whatever it is you call them, how do you go find? How are you going to go find out more about their experience? And so, right back to this concept of customer research that is focused on empathy and gaining a better understanding of what the experience is like from their shoes. What's the view like from their chair? And so that's how you would start. And actually, customer experience work, as applied to both nonprofit and for-profit scenarios, sometimes it takes some cultural change to actually socialize the concept and get leadership on board and get your colleagues and your peers on board. And so going out and doing a little bit of research to understand, what is it like from somebody else's chair, the people that we're trying to serve, and then bringing that information back into your organization and beginning to socialize it with your teammates is a very valuable experience, and somebody needs to start. So if you're the person who is in starting out the process, that's where I would begin to start, and from there you'll find where your organization is, and hopefully it will lead you to mapping the customer's journey. It'll lead you to the type of research that allows you to create a representative profile of who you're trying to serve, and that's that persona concept that we mentioned at the front end of our conversation. And then, you don't need to know everything about everybody. What you're looking for is the key insights to the primary people that you're trying to serve, and then how do you begin to take direction from that to understand what you've got right, what could be better, and what you might want to change in the future to bring about a better result. So that would be, not to be a broken record, but customer research, right back to the beginning, research. And then once you have that foundation of real input directly from the people you're trying to serve, not from third parties, not anecdotal, once you have that direct input, how do you begin to shape that into a direction forward? And so I think that's the advice I would give to somebody just starting out.
Oh, awesome. So we've come to the end of our show, and I'd like to thank you again, John Corrigan. John is the founder and CEO of Journimap L3C, and Journimap is spelled with an I, E-Y. I want to thank you again for being our guest. So before we leave, would you care to share any parting thoughts and tell us how we can reach you?
You can reach me I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, JF Corrigan on Twitter, at JF Corrigan on Twitter, and then there's a Journimap L3C Twitter account also on LinkedIn. If you search on John Corrigan and Journimap with an I, not an E, you will find me. I would love to connect with anybody who's on our call here today, or people who listen to this and have follow-up connections. This is my passion and what I'm focused on doing. And so if someone would like to follow up on broader customer experience concepts and how they apply to the world and nonprofits and social impact, that's a subject that I'm always interested in. And so I think that's probably the best way to connect with me.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening to Nonprofit U Blog Radio Talk Show. The show will be available for download within about an hour or so. Be sure to join us next week when our guest will be Holly Ivel. She is the Director of Data Services for GuideStar, a kindred spirit to you, John.
Absolutely.
We will talk about how organizations can shore up their year-end fundraising through increased transparency and disclosure, and how to develop your organization's GuideStar profile. And I will talk to you next week. John, again, thank you so much. I have learned a whole lot. I've taken copious notes the entire time. To meet you on Thursday.
I hope to meet you too. I look forward to it. And thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All righty, great. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Valerie.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
When we go out to eat, we never agree on where to go.
I want burgers. Pizza.
Tacos it is.
The one thing we do agree on is we all want unlimited high-speed data. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 lines with unlimited LTE data for just $100, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Offers require port and of number not currently active on T-Mobile network. During congestion, the fraction of customers using more than 35 gigs per month may notice reduced speeds. Video streams at up to 40p. No tethering. See store for details and terms and conditions.
When we go out to eat, we never agree on where to go.
I want burgers. Pizza.
Tacos it is.
The one thing we do agree on is we all want unlimited high-speed data. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 lines with unlimited LTE data for just $100, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Offers require port and of number not currently active on T-Mobile network. During congestion, the fraction of customers using more than 35 gigs per month may notice reduced speeds. Video streams at up to 40p. No tethering. See store for details and terms and conditions.